The cold wind howled across the fjord as Vigdis Haraldsdottir stood alone at the water's edge, her long, honey-brown hair whipping against her face. Her hands were raw from scrubbing her father's blood from her clothes, the icy water turning her fingers numb. Behind her, the voices of the Thing assembly carried on the wind, her fate being decided without her counsel or consent. "The gods have marked her," she heard her uncle Gunnar proclaim. 3 husbands dead before their time, 2 in battle and now Harald in his sleep. The Norns have woven death into her fate. She brings ill fortune to our clan. Vigdis clutched the iron Thor's hammer that hung from her neck, the one her father had given her when she was but a child. The metal was cold against her skin, offering no comfort. She knew what they would decide. A woman without family, believed to be cursed by the gods, there was no place for her among the Hawk clan now. "Exile," came the pronouncement from her uncle, the new Jarl. "The clan has spoken." She did not turn to face them. Exile was a fate near to death in these harsh northern lands, especially with winter's first breath already chilling the air. But deep in her heart, a small voice whispered that perhaps this was her chance to escape the curse that had followed her since girlhood. Every man who pledged himself to her met an early grave. Perhaps the gods had meant her to walk alone. The Thing assembly dispersed, warriors and women returning to their longhouses as darkness fell. Only then did Vigdis turn back to the settlement that had been her home for all of her 20 summers. One night. They had granted her one night to gather what she could carry before she must depart at first light. In her father's, now her uncle's, longhouse, she packed sparingly, a small blade, a flint, a woolen cloak lined with fox fur, a cooking pot, dried fish, and the wooden comb her mother had carved before fever took her. As she worked, her cousin Astrid slipped inside, eyes darting fearfully toward the door. "They say you are cursed," Astrid whispered, keeping her distance. "And what do you say?" Vigdis asked, her voice steady despite the pain tearing at her heart. "I say my uncle died an old man in his sleep, as many do," Astrid replied, placing a small bundle on the sleeping bench. "Extra provisions. The nights grow colder." Vigdis nodded her thanks, words failing her. At least one person did not believe she carried death in her shadow. That night, she slept fitfully beside the dying embers of the hearth fire, listening to the snores of the family that had cast her out. In her dreams, ravens circled overhead, calling with human voices, speaking of fate and distant shores. She woke before dawn, gathered her meager belongings, and slipped away as the first pale light crept across the eastern sky. For 3 days, she traveled southward along the coast, sleeping in shallow caves and eating sparingly of her provisions. On the 4th day, the skies opened, pouring icy rain that soaked through her cloak and tunic. Shivering, vision blurring with cold and exhaustion, she stumbled upon a small fishing village just as darkness fell. The village was unfamiliar, not of her clan's territory. Smoke rose from several longhouses, and the smell of roasting fish made her stomach clench with hunger. She approached cautiously, knowing strangers were rarely welcomed without question in these times of raid and counter-raid. Before she could reach the nearest dwelling, shouts erupted from the shoreline. Warriors emerged from the longhouses, grabbing axes and spears. Through the rain and gathering darkness, Vigdis saw the sleek shape of a warship being dragged onto the beach. Raiders! She should have fled, but her legs would not move. The cold had seeped into her bones, and hunger had weakened her beyond reason. She stood, swaying, as the village men charged toward the ship and the warriors who leaped from its sides. The battle was brief and brutal. The raiders were too many, too skilled. Village men fell to axes and swords, their blood washing away in the rain. Vigdis pressed herself against a storage shed, praying to Odin that the darkness would shield her from sight. A massive warrior broke from the fighting, his battle rage still upon him as he stormed in her direction. His face was streaked with blood beneath his helmet, his blue eyes wild with the berserker fury. He carried an axe in one hand and a shield in the other, both marked with the sigil of the Wolf clan, ancient enemies of her own people. Vigdis raised her small knife, knowing it would offer no protection against this giant, but unwilling to die without showing courage worthy of the sagas. The warrior stopped, his chest heaving as he stared at her. The berserker light faded from his eyes, replaced by something else, curiosity, perhaps. "You are not of this village," he said, his voice surprisingly gentle for one so fearsome in appearance. "I am no one," she replied, knife still raised. "A wanderer without clan or kin." He studied her, taking in her sodden clothes, the dark circles beneath her eyes, the proud tilt of her chin despite her obvious exhaustion. Then he looked at the iron hammer at her throat. "That is finely crafted," he observed. "Not the ornament of no one." Shouts from his fellow raiders drew his attention. The village was subdued, men gathering plunder, women and children being herded toward the ship. "I am Vidar Gunnarsson of the Wolf clan," he said, turning back to her. "And you have a choice, woman with no clan. Come with us as free companion, or stay here and die from cold before the moon rises." "Free companion?" she questioned, suspicious. "Not thrall." A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "I have enough thralls. I seek something rarer." "And what is that?" "One who chooses to follow." Perhaps it was madness brought on by cold and hunger, but something in his words kindled a small warmth within her chest. The curse whispered in the back of her mind, he would die like all the others if she dared to care for him. But the alternative was certain death alone in the wilderness. "I am Vigdis Haraldsdottir," she said at last, lowering her knife. "Once of the Hawk clan." His eyes widened slightly at the name of her clan. "The Hawk?" "Our blood enemies for 3 generations." "I am exiled," she said bitterly. "Their enemy now as much as yours." Vidar considered this, rain streaming down his face and beard. Then he extended his hand. "Come, Hawk woman. The Wolf clan may yet have use for one the Hawk has discarded." That night, huddled beneath furs in the lurching warship, surrounded by warriors who would have slain her on sight had they known her true clan, Vigdis wondered what fate the Norns were weaving for her now. The man Vidar had given her dry clothes, food, and a place away from the other raiders. He had not touched her, had not made demands. It was more kindness than she had expected from an enemy. As dawn broke, the raiding ship approached a larger settlement nestled in a protected fjord. Smoke rose from numerous longhouses and workshops. Children and dogs ran along the shore as the ship was sighted. This was no mere village but the home settlement of the Wolf clan. Vidar guided her from the ship, keeping her close as curious eyes followed them. "My father is Jarl here," he explained quietly. "He will question you. Speak truth, but perhaps not all of it at once." The name of Hawk clan still raises hackles. The Wolf Jarl, Gunnar the Grey, was an imposing figure despite his advanced years. His hall was warm and smoky, adorned with shields and the heads of great beasts, bears, wolves, and a massive elk with antlers that spanned the width of 2 men. "So," the old Jarl said after Vidar had presented her, "my son brings home a stray instead of a proper bride." His eyes were sharp, missing nothing. "Why were you alone, girl?" "No woman of breeding travels without protection in these lands." Vigdis straightened her spine. "I was exiled, Jarl. My father died, and the clan believed me cursed." "Cursed?" The Jarl's bushy eyebrows rose. "How so?" "3 men who sought to wed me died. The clan believed I brought death to those who loved me." The Jarl laughed, a surprisingly warm sound. If that were true, half the widows in this settlement would be exiled. Death comes to us all, girl. Some sooner than others. His casual dismissal of the curse that had haunted her for years left Vigdis speechless. She has skill with herbs, Vidar interjected. I watched her gather plants during our journey. And she has the hands of one who has worked wool and needle. The Jarl nodded thoughtfully. We lost our healer last winter. You may stay, girl, and prove your worth. But know this, if you bring harm to my people, exile will seem a gentle fate compared to what follows. And so Vigdis found herself given a small corner in the dwelling of the weaver Helga, an ancient woman with fingers still nimble despite her years. By day she helped with the endless work of spinning, weaving, and gathering healing herbs. By night she lay awake, wondering when the wolf clan would discover her true identity and drive her out, or worse. Vidar visited often, bringing small gifts, a carved wooden cup, a length of bright ribbon, a stone with strange markings. Each time, he would sit and talk with her, asking of her knowledge of herbs and healing, telling tales of his voyages to distant shores. Never once did he mention the blood feud between their clans. As the days shortened and the first snow dusted the mountains, Vigdis found herself looking forward to his visits. He was unlike any man she had known, thoughtful beneath his warrior's exterior, curious about the world beyond their fjords, respectful of her knowledge and skills. "Why do you show me such kindness?" she asked him one evening as they sat by Helga's hearth, the old woman having fallen asleep over her spinning. Vidar studied the flames before answering. "When I found you, you raised a knife against me, though you must have known it was futile. There is courage in you, Vigdis of the Hawks. And perhaps I grow weary of feuds that began before our grandfathers drew breath." "Your people would not agree," she said softly. "Blood feuds are not easily forgotten." "Perhaps." He reached out, his calloused fingers gently touching the Thor's hammer at her throat. "But I have sailed far enough to know there are other ways to live than those we have always known." His touch sent warmth spreading through her chest, a feeling she immediately fought to quell. The curse still lingered at the edges of her thoughts. Any man who loved her was doomed. Winter settled hard upon the settlement. The fjord froze along its edges, and snow piled deep around the longhouses. Inside, life continued, weaving, carving, storytelling, preparing for the time when the sea would open again and the men would sail forth to trade and raid. Vigdis's knowledge of healing herbs made her increasingly valuable to the clan. When fever swept through the settlement, it was her tinctures of willow bark and honey that broke the heat and saved many, including the Jarl's youngest grandchild. "You have proven your worth," the Jarl told her afterward, presenting her with a silver arm ring. "You are now under my protection." The gesture stunned her. To be under a Jarl's protection was no small thing. It meant she was acknowledged as part of the clan, though not yet by blood or marriage. That night, as the settlement celebrated the end of the fever outbreak, Vidar found her at the edge of the feast. "You saved my niece," he said. "The clan will not forget." "I only did what I could," she replied. "My father has given you his protection. Do you know what that means?" She nodded. "It means I have a place here." "It means more than that." He took her hand, his expression serious. "It means you could marry within the clan without seeking permission from a family that has cast you out." Her heart stuttered in her chest. "Why would that matter to me?" "Because I would ask for your hand, Vigdis Haraldsdottir. If you would consider it." The warmth that had been growing in her heart froze in an instant. "No," she whispered. "You don't understand." "Then help me understand." "The curse is real, Vidar. 3 men who sought to wed me died. I will not bring death to you too." He frowned. "You truly believe this?" I have seen it with my own eyes. My first betrothed, Leif, drowned the day after our handfasting was arranged. Eric fell in a border skirmish a week before our wedding feast. And Halfdan. She swallowed hard. Halfdan simply did not wake one morning, though he had been hale the night before. Vidar was silent for a long moment. Then he said quietly, "My people believe fate cannot be avoided, only met with courage. If it is my fate to die because I love you, then I will meet that fate gladly, for the joy of the days we have." His words shook her to her core. No one had spoken of loving her despite the curse. They had either dismissed it as superstition or fled from it in fear. "I need time," she said at last. "Time you shall have," he replied. "But know this, I have sailed to shores where different gods are worshipped, where different stars guide men's paths. And in all my travels, I have never found anyone like you. Curse or no curse, my heart has chosen." As winter slowly yielded to spring, Vigdis found herself drawn more deeply into the life of the Wolf clan. She learned their customs, their stories, their ways of honoring the gods. And always, Vidar was nearby, patient yet persistent in his attentions. Despite her fears, she felt herself falling in love with him, with his quiet strength, his thoughtfulness, his vision of a world beyond their fjords. When he returned from the first spring raid with a book taken from a Christian monastery, a treasure beyond price, and presented it to her though she could not read its strange markings, she knew her heart was lost. But the curse still whispered in her dreams. Each time he spoke of their future, she pulled away, afraid that to love him fully would be to condemn him. The settlement prepared for the great spring festival, when sacrifices would be made to Thor and Freya for fertility and good harvests. Vigdis helped prepare the ritual mead, gathering honey and herbs under the guidance of the Volva, the clan's Cirrus. On the eve of the festival, as twilight painted the fjord in shades of gold and purple, Vidar came to her with unusual seriousness. "Walk with me," he said, offering his hand. He led her away from the busy settlement, up a winding path to a high point overlooking the fjord. There, a small shrine had been erected, stone pillars carved with runes, a shallow bowl for offerings. "This is where I come to think," he said. "To ask the gods for guidance." "It's beautiful," she said, watching as the last light caught the water far below. "Vigdis." He turned to face her, taking both her hands in his. "I have respected your fears, given you time. But I can wait no longer. Before tomorrow's festival, I must know, will you be my wife?" Her heart cried out yes, but the words caught in her throat. "The curse, I care nothing for curses," he interrupted. "Only for you. How can you dismiss it so easily? 3 men, Vidar. 3 men dead. Men die. Warriors especially. It is our lot." His blue eyes were intense in the fading light. "And even if this curse is real, I would rather one day at your side than a long life without you." Tears filled her eyes. "I couldn't bear it if you died because of me." "Then listen carefully." He reached into a pouch at his belt and withdrew something that glinted in the last rays of sunlight, a delicate silver pendant in the shape of a wolf. "While you have been fighting your fear, I have been seeking answers. I traveled to speak with the oldest Volva in the northern fjords, a woman said to see beyond the veil of this world." Vigdis stared at him. "You sought a Cirrus? For me? For us?" He pressed the wolf pendant into her palm. "She told me a truth that you must hear. Your curse is not what you believe." "What do you mean?" "The deaths around you were not caused by fate's cruel hand, but by human malice. The Volva saw poison in a cup, a bribed enemy, a pillow pressed over a sleeping face." Vigdis felt as though the ground had dropped away beneath her feet. "Murder? But who would? Your uncle, Vidar said grimly. The same who declared you cursed and sent you into exile. The Volva saw his hand in all three deaths. But why would he? Understanding dawned cold and terrible. My father's lands. As his only child, they would come to me and my husband. With me gone. He claims them all. Vidar nodded. The Volva confirmed what I had begun to suspect when you told me your story. No curse killed those men. Only greed. Vigdis's mind reeled, memories realigning themselves in this new, horrible light. Her uncle's insistence that she remarry quickly after each loss, his growing impatience, his swift move to declare her cursed after her father's death. My father, she whispered. Did he also? The Volva could not say for certain. But she believed he hastened an end that was already approaching. Vigdis closed her eyes, grief and rage washing through her in equal measure. All this time, she had believed herself marked by the gods, when in truth she had been merely an obstacle to her uncle's ambition. The Wolf clan and Hawk clan have been enemies for generations, Vidar continued softly. But perhaps that too has been built on lies. The Volva spoke of the original feud, how it began not with the theft of land that both sides claim, but with two brothers who coveted the same woman. Like my uncle coveted my father's lands, Vigdis murmured. Yes. Greed and lies, passing through generations until we forget the truth. He gently tilted her face up to his. But we can choose a different path, Vigdis. We can end this cycle. She looked into his eyes and saw no doubt there, only love and determination. The burden she had carried for so long, the belief that she brought death to those she loved, began to lift from her shoulders like morning mist burned away by the sun. Yes, she said, the word emerging as barely more than a breath. Then stronger, yes, I will be your wife. His smile was like the breaking of dawn. He gathered her close, his lips finding hers in a kiss that felt like coming home after a long, dark journey. But as they descended the hill hand in hand, a new fear took root. My uncle will not stop, she said. If he learns I live, that I am to marry, he may try again. Let him try, Vidar said grimly. He will find the Wolf clan less easily deceived than the Hawk. And now that we know to watch for poison and treachery, he will find no easy path to harm you. The spring festival dawned bright and clear. Before the entire clan, Vidar declared his intention to make Vigdis his wife. The Jarl, seeing the happiness in his son's eyes, gave his blessing readily. But as the celebration continued, a commotion arose at the edge of the gathering. Warriors approached, led by a familiar figure that made Vigdis's blood run cold, her uncle Gunnar, now Jarl of the Hawk clan. We come seeking a woman, he announced, his voice carrying across the suddenly silent gathering. An exile from our clan who may have sought refuge here. Vidar stepped forward, his hand on his sword hilt. Why do you seek this woman? She is accused of murder, her uncle declared. Of poisoning her father and 3 men who were to be her husbands. We would see justice done. Murmurs spread through the crowd. Vigdis felt herself trembling, not with fear but with rage at the audacity of his lies. The Wolf Jarl raised his hand for silence. Serious charges. What proof do you bring? The testimony of our Cirith, who had visions of the woman's crimes, her uncle replied smoothly. And the pattern of death that follows her. Vigdis could remain silent no longer. She stepped forward, throwing back her hood to reveal her face. You speak of visions, uncle? Then let us hear all visions, not just those that serve your purpose. Her uncle's face darkened with rage and something else, fear. Vigdis. So you did flee here, to our enemies. I fled exile, the fate you condemned me to after murdering my father, she said clearly, her voice carrying to all assembled. Gasps and murmurs rippled through both groups of warriors. "She raves," her uncle said quickly. "The guilt of her crimes has turned her mind." "Does she?" Vidar moved to stand beside her. "We too have consulted the seers, Jarl of the Hawk. And they tell a different tale, of a greedy kinsman who eliminated those who stood between him and lands he coveted." "You would take the word of this cursed woman over mine," her uncle sputtered. "I would take truth over lies," the wolf Jarl said, stepping forward. "And I have heard whispers even before today that all was not right with Harald's death or his daughter's exile." Her uncle's hand moved to his sword, but hawk warriors around him seemed uncertain, looking between their Jarl and Vigdis with new eyes. "There is a way to settle this," Vidar declared. "The god's judgment. Holmgang. A ritual duel. Sacred, bound by strict rules, its outcome considered the will of the gods themselves." Her uncle's face twisted. "You would fight for this woman? Enemy of your clan?" "She is enemy no longer," Vidar replied. "She is to be my wife. And yes, I will fight for her honor and her truth." The color drained from her uncle's face. He had not expected this, a formal challenge before witnesses, where his skill, not his scheming, would determine the outcome. "Unless," Vidar added coldly, "you fear the god's judgment." It was a challenge no warrior could refuse without losing all honor. Her uncle drew himself up. "I accept. When dawn comes tomorrow, we will let steel speak truth." That night, as the Hawk clan made camp some distance from the wolf settlement, Vigdis could not sleep. She paced the small chamber Vidar had given her in his father's longhouse. "You should rest," Vidar said, watching her from the doorway. "How can I rest when tomorrow you risk your life because of me?" He crossed to her, taking her hands in his. "I risk my life for truth. And for a future where our clans might find peace instead of endless feud. My uncle is skilled with a sword," she warned. "He did not become Jarl through counsel wisdom alone. And I have fought from Northumbria to the eastern lands," he reminded her gently. "I do not enter this contest unprepared." She pressed her forehead against his chest, inhaling his scent of wood smoke and sea salt. "I have only just found you. I cannot lose you now." "You won't." He tilted her face up to his. "The gods favor those who stand for truth. And I have something your uncle lacks." "What is that?" "Something worth fighting for." He kissed her then, a promise sealed with lips and breath and the steady beating of his heart against hers. Dawn broke cold and clear over the flat, stone-ringed ground where the Holmgang would take place. Both clans gathered to witness, standing in tense, separate groups. Vigdis stood with the wolf Jarl, her hands clasped so tightly that her knuckles showed white. Her uncle entered the ring first, sword and shield ready, his face set in grim lines. Vidar followed, moving with the fluid grace that belied his size. They faced each other across the ritual ground as the wolf clan's lawspeaker recited the ancient words that set the terms of the duel. "This combat determines truth between Vidar Gunnarsson and Gunnar Eriksson," he intoned. "The gods will guide the righteous hand. The victor's word shall be accepted as truth by all who witness." At the lawspeaker's signal, the fight began. The clash of steel against shields echoed across the fjord as the two men circled, thrust, parried. Her uncle fought with the desperate fury of a man who knew his lies were unraveling. Vidar fought with the controlled precision of one who had faced death many times and did not fear it. Blood was drawn on both sides, a slice to Vidar's forearm, a cut along her uncle's thigh. The morning sun climbed higher as the duel continued, neither man yielding. Then her uncle stumbled on a loose stone. It was only the briefest loss of balance, but Vidar saw his opening. With a movement almost too fast to follow, he knocked aside her uncle's shield and pressed the tip of his sword to the man's throat. "Yield," Vidar commanded. Her uncle's eyes burned with hatred. "Never," he spat, and tried to swing his sword in a last, desperate attack. Vidar stepped inside the arc of the blade and drove his sword home. Silence fell over the assembled witnesses as her uncle crumpled to the ground. Vidar stood over him, his face solemn. "Before these witnesses and the gods, I declare the truth," Vidar proclaimed. "This man murdered his brother and 3 innocent men to gain land and power. His deceit ends here." He turned to the Hawk warriors. "Your Jarl has fallen. By rites of combat and truth revealed, I claim his falsehoods dispelled. Vigdis Haraldsdottir stands innocent of all charges, and the feud between our clans, built on lies, should end with this day." For a moment, no one moved or spoke. Then an older warrior of the Hawk clan stepped forward. "I was shield brother to Harald, Vigdis's father," he said slowly. "I had doubts when he died so suddenly, when his daughter was so quickly exiled. I believe the words spoken here today." He turned to Vigdis. "The Hawk clan owes you a blood debt, daughter of Harald. How would you have us repay it?" Vigdis moved to stand beside Vidar, her head held high. "I would have peace between our clans. An end to the blood feud that has taken so many lives. And my father's lands returned not to me, but held in trust for those who work them faithfully." The old warrior nodded. "It shall be done. And who will speak for the Hawk clan now that our Jarl is fallen?" Vigdis looked at the assembled warriors of her birth clan, seeing many faces she had known since childhood. "Let the thing assemble and choose wisely. Perhaps now, without the poison of my uncle's ambition, you may find a leader who values truth over power." As the sun reached its zenith, the Hawk clan departed, bearing the body of their fallen Jarl. But they left not as enemies but with cautious respect, the first tenuous threads of peace stretching between clans that had known only hatred for generations. That evening, as the Wolf clan celebrated both the victory and the unexpected promise of peace with their ancient enemies, Vidar led Vigdis once more to the high point overlooking the fjord. "The curse is broken," he said softly. "Revealed as nothing but the web of a spider who sought to entangle you in his schemes." "Because of you," she replied. "You believed in me when I could not believe in myself. You sought truth when I had accepted lies." He smiled, running his fingers through her long hair. "When I found you that night in the rain, something in me recognized something in you, a kindred spirit, perhaps. One who had also questioned the old ways, the ancient hatreds." "And now," she asked, "what do we do with this peace we've started to build? Now we continue what we began." He reached into his belt pouch and withdrew 2 simple gold rings. "In the midst of war, we found each other. In the shadow of hatred, we kindled love. Let us show our clans that there is another way to live than endless feud." He knelt before her, offering one of the rings. "Vigdis Haraldsdottir, will you join your life to mine? Not as hawk to wolf, but as woman to man, heart to heart, building something new from the ashes of the old." Tears blurred her vision as she took the ring. "Yes," she whispered. 1,000 times yes. When the first summer ships sailed from the Wolf clan settlement, they carried not just warriors bent on raid and trade, but also a new Jarl and his bride, a union of hawk and wolf, a living symbol that even the oldest hatred could yield to love. And if sometimes Vigdis still woke in the night, haunted by memories of exile and false curses, Vidar was there to hold her close and remind her that they had forged their own fate, stronger than any curse, more enduring than any ancient feud. In time, children came, strong sons and wise daughters who grew up hearing not tales of clan against clan, but stories of how truth prevailed over lies, and how love built bridges where hatred had erected walls. And on quiet evenings, when Vidar and Vigdis would climb to their special place overlooking the fjord, they would watch the sun sink into the western sea and give thanks to the gods who had guided their paths to cross on that rainy night long ago, when an exiled woman and a questioning warrior discovered that some fates are not written by the Norns, but by the courage of those willing to challenge the stories they have always been told.